Amen. You are listening to the Financial Promise 30 Minutes of Power with Jason Fields. And want to say thank you all for joining us. It has been a delight to come to you all and talk about what I call my ministry and the things that we want to talk about as far as business, financial literacy, leaderships, emotional intelligence, things of that nature, and how to tie that in a godly manner. And how to tie that in as these are the things that we should contemplate in our daily walk. And so today I have a lot to cover because I want to give you some things that, number one, I've been thinking about, and I'll tell you how I got to this topic. And that topic is, who are you following? Because it matters. Leadership matters. Who are you following? Meaning, who are you following in your church as your spiritual head? Who are you following in your family life? Family members, father figures, uncles, cousins. Who are you following as friends? And when I say following, I'm not necessarily always talking about, you either work for this person or this person is giving you orders. I'm saying, who are you looking towards when they're in some form of leadership capacity? Who are you following? Who are you giving your time and emotion? Who are you committed to? Because that matters. It matters politically, it matters spiritually, it matters from a community standpoint, it matters economically. So who you follow, gang, matters a great deal. And so before we get to that, and before I get to shouting out some of the guys who I think the Lord has just put on my spirit to give them a shout out, because I've been watching them and watching their movements, and I'll bring their names up in a second. But I have a major announcement. Many of you may not know. Many of you, I do believe, know that I am currently the Wisconsin State Representative of the 11th Assembly District, and I've been serving diligently. I want to say to the best of my abilities, being the one African American, I believe, so far, that has legislation signed by 3 different governors. So it lets you know that I take the job very seriously. I would like to say, effective at it. But it has been brought to my attention, and I am now running for the City of Milwaukee Comptroller. That is the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Milwaukee. This is the individual who audits, who looks over, whose job it is to understand pension management, voting on education, charter school, authorizing boards, things of that nature. Also looking at the departments, 40 departments in the City of Milwaukee, and trying to determine and help them figure out what are best practices. Typically they do that through some form of auditing. They sit at the council's financial committee, and what I like to believe is this person should be one where they're talking about innovative ideas to, 1, protect taxpayers, number 2, make Wisconsin, make Milwaukee better economically by offering some ideas, some solutions to all of our aldermen and even to the mayor, things that can be done to put us in a better financial position. Likewise, it is a body that is independent, that really should be a resource and sort of a office where there is some continuity between when decisions are made. Is this the best decision financially for the City of Milwaukee? So I am running for the City of Milwaukee's Chief Financial Officer position. That is the Milwaukee Comptroller. This is my show, so I can do this. You can go to www.fieldsformke.com, read all about me, my criteria, my background, my professional, my careers, my associations, and that ties into today's topic. Because when I talk about who are you following, and I'm going to give you a sense as to how I got here, how I got on this topic. So I said before that I'm in politics. I don't believe in calling myself a leader. That's not for me to do. My job as a person in a leadership role is to work my butt off to make sure that somehow I am improving the quality of lives for all the people in either the 11th Assembly District or now, as I'm running for City of Comptroller, the City of Milwaukee. My job is to make sure that somehow I'm leaving some kind of legacy, or I'm offering up innovative ideas to hopefully put us all in a better position. And so it came to my attention, gang, and I want to say this because I've been bothered by a few things that I think are going on, that are happening. And so, looking at all these other candidates and leaders, and this is where I want to give a shout out to Dr. Robert Biko Baker. Biko and I went to Milwaukee Lutheran. I was ahead of him. Beak is doing a lot of work academically. He's also doing a lot of work with young men, running a soccer league, a soccer camp, I believe. The young men are pretty good there. But Biko wrote an article on Facebook, and if you don't know him, I would suggest you all take a look if you're on social media, Rob Biko Baker, and his latest commentary about how we need to begin to, in essence, what I got from it was pick leaders after you've sort of tested them. Pick leaders who know what they're talking about. Pick leaders who won't just say anything to get elected. And for me, as a person that's in this body, this body of politics, it always bothers me when I run against or I run up on people or I see it on a federal level, people who are willing to say anything to get a vote. And so they make these grandiose promises, or they say these ideas or things that on the surface sound good, but yet all it takes is anybody with a little bit of common sense to go, you know what, that doesn't make sense. How are you going to do some of the things that you're talking about? And in essence, because they don't give you that, they're playing on the community ignorance. And when people do that, for me, these are very dangerous people. Because if you are setting a tone, if you are trying to get into a leadership position, and your foundation is built upon taking advantage and preying on people's fears and ignorance, then in essence, you are not built to help the community. And I see this all the time, and I got to be honest with you. It bothers me because those of us who pride ourselves on doing the work, reading, studying, making sure that we are looking at solutions that are well thought out, what it does for us is it sends a message that you're not serious about the job. And if you're not serious about the job, then save us the time and don't do it. Stop saying things that make absolutely no sense to a person who has some common sense just to get elected. And so if you all can read Dr. Rob Biko Baker's post on Facebook, I think you will find it vehemently describes the perfect situation as far as who we are following and choosing as leaders to take us to the next level. One of the things that Beak said was, you know, the leaders should read and study. And let me be candid and honest with all of you. There is this number out there that particularly a lot of our community leaders, whether they're elected or not, that we don't read. And so I periodically post things that I want you to know that I'm doing research, I'm reading. And so today, for the people who are watching me on Facebook, I brought some light reading for adjacent fields because I want you to see the kinds of things that I take serious when I'm in this position, which I believe is a God-ordained position. Or at least I'm giving him the glory that I'm here. So even if he didn't ordain it, I'm going to give God glory that I'm here because I'm here, and the only person who can really be credited for that is him. So taxation and regulation of public policies, that's informational paper number 9 from the state of Wisconsin. Tax incremental financing, that's informational paper number 17. Shared revenue, the county and municipal aid and utility program, that's information number 18. These are all public documents you can go and read. All you have to do is go to the Wisconsin Legislative Reference Bureau, look at their publications, and you can get any of these. Local government revenue options, informational paper number 15. And property tax level in Wisconsin, informational paper number 13. Property tax administration, informational paper number 14. These are all informational papers that I am reading, I wanted to read because I take my job seriously. Whether it's in the state legislature, whether it's as the city comptroller, I am not going to just sit there and say anything without further calls, without further research, without digging into the minutia of it to make sure that when I'm saying something, it's not because I'm taking advantage of ignorance or I want to prey on your fears just to get some votes. I find that very dishonest. I find it distasteful. I find it disrespectful. It offends me. And we have, as a community and as leaders, put way too many people in positions who do not take the role seriously. And that's why we need to answer this question. Who are you following? So how I got here on this topic. I was sitting at home. I was in the bed. Tasha and I were waking up, and I usually watch MSNBC or Meet the Press. I've been watching it for years. It's just something that I have to do. I don't know why. I just love Chuck Todd, and I love watching MSNBC. And so Tasha was on her way to Gary, Indiana, to visit some folks. And she said, Jason, are you going to church today? And I was like, or she said, or are you taking a sabbatical? Because I hadn't been in church for a while. I was sick, and I was under the weather for a while. I was out of town. And so I said, no, I'm going to rest a little bit more to start this week because I got a lot of stuff that I'm doing. And so I'm sitting there, for whatever reason, I'm just looking at stuff. Meet the Press wasn't all that impressing. And all of a sudden, some said, get up and go to church. And so, like clockwork, I just jumped up. I told Tasha, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to go to church. Kissed her goodbye, and then next thing I know, I'm off to church. And so we're in church, and after that message, right, I believe that I got the message to get up, go to church, because there was something that God wanted me to hear. I think God wanted me to do this topic, do this discussion. One of the reasons why I got into politics, again, is because and when I say I heard God, I don't mean I heard an audible voice. I mean, there was such a feeling of you need to get involved, you need to hear this. I felt something, and that was around, and I remember like clockwork, I felt like God was saying, Jason, everybody is in leadership positions. Everybody is doing all these things, and no one is inquiring of me. And I don't know why. That just stuck with me. It just stuck with me. And so I was listening to our assistant pastor, Andrew Hopgood, and he said something that really, I think the Spirit got my juices flowing. And it was, when God, Exodus 14, the story of the children of Israel crossing the Red Sea, when God parted the Red Sea, and Pastor Hopgood said this, he said, God is so good that they even walked on dry land. And I just thought about that. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, how great is that? It's something so little that we don't think about when we hear that story. We just think about the water on the left, the water on the right, and you walking through. But that God is so good that he even had the land in between, the pathway, dry land. And it's something that if God is concerned about minute details, then we all should understand that God is concerned about who we are following. And so I'm thinking about that story, and just a bunch of things started to come through my head. And one of the things was, I bet there were some people who, when they got there all the time, I bet Moses had to deal with a contingency of folk who were complaining, who said, you know what, I don't know if we should leave. And then when they got to the Red Sea, said, man, we're not doing this. And the idea that those people exist really made me go, you're going to have a good leadership quality. You're going to have someone connected to God, connected to the Spirit of God in leadership positions, so we can bring you through those promised lands. Because even those people who may have had some doubt, I am sure that when they looked at Joshua, Aaron, Moses, and when they looked at that leadership, there was something that said, you know what, I might be nervous, I may be scared, but I'm going to trust them. And the long story being short and being told is that God brought those children through those obstacles. God brought them through, but they had to follow a leader who was connected spiritually, mentally, physically to someone who could do that person, that entity being God. So to get on to this, who are we following? I told you all, and I gave you my rant about why I think who we follow matters. A couple of names that I want to just shout out that I have found to be impressive individuals that God has given them in their own ministries, and they are displaying great. CEO and executive director of Center for Self-Sufficiency, and Chris Conley. And Chris Conley is part of a group, and I saw Chris, Chris, if I get the group name wrong, please forgive me. Him and Keon Jackson Malone, ourselves together. Let's get our community together. Let's stop the violence. Let's begin to think of another way to be successful. So these guys are taking it upon themselves. I don't believe anybody asked them. In fact, when I asked Chris Conley, I said, Chris, why'd you do it? Chris's answer was, man, there was a different way for me to do it in the classroom. And most of these guys, I think, have some classroom experience. Chris said, I just didn't think I was reaching. I'm paraphrasing. I didn't think I was doing enough just in the classroom. And so, in my mind, Chris chose to do something harder. Chris chose to meet people where they're at, go out on the street, and really have a ministry set forth. And I can tell you, and as he will tell you, because we'll have him on the show one time, sometime soon, that is not an easy position. But here's the question. How did these guys get into these leadership positions? Why is it important that we follow leaders, good leaders? And here's what Pastor Malone said, and it really hit home for me. And we were talking about what causes sin. And in the sermon yesterday was about that in today's world, you have to be cautious, wise, and some things you got to pass over. You got to just let go. And so he was talking about how a lot of times the causes for sin are related, are caused by certain things, or the troubles, the problems, I should say, in our society, in America, in the world, are caused by certain problems, sin being number one. And some of these things that causes us to sin can be broken down. And the reason why I want to tie this into the question of who are you following? Because if you're going to follow somebody, whether they're a political leader, whether they're a spiritual leader, whether they're a community leader, whether they're family members, you have to be in a position to learn and know how to test those spirits. God says, test the spirits. And so how do you do that? How do you test the spirits of people that are either running for political office, that are either starting a church, that are either leading some community organization? How do you test that leadership so that you know whether or not you should be getting behind this person? And when I say test the leadership, gang, please mean, I believe me too. I welcome the test. Because I'll tell you in a heartbeat, look, I've done stupid stuff in my day, a recovering alcoholic, filed for bankruptcy. I will tell you all the negative stuff about me because I don't want you to think that I'm walking around here believing that I somehow figured it all out or that I'm holier than thou. Nope, I'm dead honest about this. I am walking to try to better and improve myself for me and my wife just like the rest of you. So I don't ever want people to think that I'm somehow on my high horse acting as if I figured it all out. I can tell you I have not. And so I'm more than willing to share with you my ups and downs and trials and tribulations, the things that I struggle with, because that is one way you need to vet me. Am I authentic? And more importantly, am I telling you the truth? And so the reason why it matters on who you're following is because of this. When God comes against people or a nation, and Pastor Malone, you all know I'm a member of the New Testament, Judas Malone, he said when God comes against people, and even leaders, the entire community pays for that. When God brings his wrath, the entire community, the entire nation pays for that. And I thought to myself, I never really looked at it like that, but in my thinking and then reflecting back on all the stories in the Bible, where because of some bad leader, some can make the argument that we are in that scenario now, but I'll digress. That's not for me. That's for you to figure out on your own. We'll come back to that. But when God brings the wrath or God removes the restraints of grace, the whole nation suffers. And so one thing that we have to do is, number one, when we're asking, who should we be following? Number one, there's some things you need to look for in leadership. Are they studying? Are they proving themselves? Are you finding that they have found themselves to be approved? The Bible says these people, you have to find yourself to be approved by God. And what I mean by that is, and when I'm talking about the word test, it means that some of you, many of us, we have to do some work. You can't just get my literature or somebody else's literature and see the picture and say, oh, Jason is cute, good looking, I'm going to vote for him. Granted, I'm going to dig that. But it should be that you looked at me, you did some research, you looked at my policy ideas, and you said, I can understand that, I can get with that. So I have to show myself approved in the sense that you have to know that I know what I'm talking about if you are going to follow me. And I would say that because leadership is not just in politics, it's in business, it's in your personal life, it's in your spiritual life. So you have to follow and find that these individuals are approved. One way to do that spiritually is you have to study the Bible yourself. Because quite honestly, gang, I've been in some churches where some people said some off the wall stuff that was not backed up by the Bible. And so you have to see that these people are showing themselves approved. The way they do that, the way you can see that is you know that they're studying. You know that they know their stuff. They're not willing to just say anything to get your support, and just as equally as important, they're not willing to not say anything. We have a lot of people today in churches that are not willing to talk about the real gospel and the things that offend God. Everybody wants to give some lovey-dovey message, but we don't want to talk about some of the real stuff as if God doesn't hate some things. And there are some verses, and I want to say Proverbs, where yes, it lists some things that God hates. But we don't want to talk about that stuff because that might upset the congregation or some people. And I think when you are following leaders like that, you are doing a disservice to yourself. More importantly, you are disrespecting God. Now, how do you test these leaders? Number one, you need to be able to spiritually discern, is this a person full of pride? Is this person selfish? Is this person a malicious person? Is this person a backbiter? Is this person saying something one day and then 2-3 days later they're backing it up or they're not sticking to what they just claimed? Is this person unmerciful? Meaning, is this person willing to forgive people? And I'm going to be very candid with you. This whole I can forgive but can't forget stuff, I don't buy that. I think that's garbage, and I do not like when people say that. Because I want you to put it this way. I want you to think what would happen if God said, oh, I forgive you, but I'm not forgetting. I want you to think about that. God telling you, oh, I can forgive you, but I'm not forgetting. If that were the case, if God didn't forget literally the stuff that we did, we would not be in the situation that we are in now. My theory and thesis is that in order to forgive somebody, you better forget it. Because if you hold on to it, it causes a lot of trauma. And so we're going to continue to talk about who are you following? And are they displaying leadership characteristics that are worthy for you to follow those people? And I gave you some names of some friends that I believe. I can give you more, but these were the people that God impressed upon me to mention, because I've been watching some of the things that these guys do. And the love that all 4 or 5 of these guys exude to the people in Milwaukee, the community, to the brothers and sisters on the street, I find it impeccable. I find it valiant. I find it it's admirable. Particularly the love that these guys approach their stuff with. And so I want to keep talking about this, and we're going to get into next session some of the problems and some of the causes of the problems in today's society, where I gave you a heads up that we're going to be talking about Romans 1:18-32, Proverbs 23 verses 7, in essence, that talks about you become what you think, and how some of these problems are plaguing our community. And then after I learn from Pastor Malone and get some more feedback, I'm just going to come back and tell y'all what he said. So I want to thank you all for listening to the Financial Promise 30 Minutes of Power with Jason Fields. I want you to remember, who are you following? Because leadership matters. Thank you all, and see you next week. Let's title it, Who Are You Following? Let's just leave it at that. Who are you following? And I got to get out of here, man, because I got a meeting with some lawyers downtown, brother. It's good to see you, baby. All right, do that.